Now we're live. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Council Matters meeting. First one since we've had a little bit of a hiatus of meetings. We've got councillors and members of the public here, and we are streaming live on YouTube. And whilst we can't see who you are, you can see us, and your name will be broadcast in the record, in the live broadcast. A couple more housekeeping things very quickly. There's a Q&A board that you can see. If you do have questions, please can you put your question on there, and that will be moderated by Rachel, and she will come to your question at the appropriate time. We'll be taking councillor questions first. Councillors, can you please raise your actual hand if you have a question rather than your digital hand, which is an option in Zoom, but your actual hand. Rachel's then going to come to some pre-moderated questions that have been submitted beforehand. Councillors, when you're voting, can you also raise your actual hand, your real hand, and please don't put it down until either Rachel or Paul has said that your vote has been registered. Paul Wynne is clerking, Laura will be taking minutes, and Rachel and Sarah will be moderating the questions board and the participant settings. And first, I would like to just take any apologies for this evening from Paul. Thank you.
Yeah, we've got apologies from councillors Andy Palmer, who is running late and will join us if he can, Nick Dove and Maxine Crawley.
Great, thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest this evening? Was that a hand up, Andy Palmer? Was that a hand? No. No. Okay, fine. And then the first thing for tonight's meeting is to approve the minutes of the last meeting, which I believe was the 26th of February. So I need somebody to propose those minutes, and thank you very much. Anyone to second? Thank you, Richard. And now we move on to the actual agenda for this evening. And point one, I believe is
just need to vote on the
we need to vote. Sorry, missed that step. If we can vote on the minutes, please.
So these are all the ones in favour.
That looks unanimous.
Your hand isn't up, Sarah. And
my hand's up. My hand's up.
My hand up. So that's majority is Andy Palmer's not got his hand up. Yep.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
I wasn't there, so I don't believe that I can vote. So.
That's fine.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks, Andy. And then at that point, we go over to agenda item number 1, which I think is a comms update. Is that right?
We just have some questions, any questions from councillors or the public. And then we'll go on to the third item, which is review of the management plans of Rodham Meadows.
Management plans, okay.
Yeah. So questions and comments first.
Any councillor questions? Could raise your hand, please. Richard.
Just ask about the traffic problems, you know, that make a note that it wasn't Frome Town Council's fault that the other kind of Welsh Mill traffic problems, it was down to county, not our fault.
Thank you. Rob?
Yeah, so I was wondering whether that's going to be publicised through various things like the Frome Times and that sort of thing, because it does seem to be what might be regarded as a huge own goal when it isn't.
Rachel, will that
Rachel,
be?
Yeah.
Hi, yes, we have a little press release that is on our website at the moment, which points everybody to the Somerset Leader if they would like to complain, and that will be going into the Frome Times on Friday, I believe the deadline is.
Thank you, Rachel. Any other questions from councillors? Any questions from participants? Do we have anything on the message board? Any? Nothing? Okay, so we'll move on to the next agenda item then. Thanks, Paul. And that's the management plan, I believe.
So that's Chris.
So Chris.
Oh, yeah. Good evening, everybody. So yeah, as Sarah suggested, we've had a little break with council matters. So these are the first management plans that we've looked at since February, and we're going to look at Rodden Meadow and Millennium Green tonight. I can only see who I can see. I'm kind of hoping everybody knows where Rodden Meadow and Millennium Green are. Next door to each other, which is why we look at them together when we do. Both fairly settled spaces now, in that the management plans haven't changed drastically for either space for 2-3 years now, with one exception, which I'll come on to in a moment. So both spaces are managed with people in mind, certainly, but also with wildlife in mind. So Rodden Meadow is certainly one of our more prominent wildabout Froome spaces, and if anybody has been down there recently, you will see how Rodden Meadow has looked for, again, the last 2 or 3 years. Lots of areas of long grass, wildflowers growing up, and that has been what we've done in this space for the last few years. The one significant change to the plan for Rodden Meadow that we're suggesting is that councillors okay myself and the other rangers to explore the possibility of a wildlife pond. We have started working with an organisation, a charity called Frog Life, and it's one of their ambitions. So I'm not committing you to a pond tonight. What I'm asking is that we can explore this possibility. It would be to the southeast of the site, so closer towards the Asda end, the far end, the old sheep field, depending on how far back people would like to go. And we think it could be a really exciting and complementary addition to the meadow. What I'd anticipate doing is probably coming back to a future meeting with a little bit more detail about what a pond might look like, how we'd manage it, which is obviously very important, and how we'd make sure it was safe for people too. But I think it's something that we'd quite like to explore, and hopefully people will appreciate and feel it fits in with what we're doing there as well. With regards to Millennium Green, no significant changes from the last plan at all. We have got somebody out and about at the moment doing our tree surveys for us. There is a possibility that those tree surveys will highlight some works for both spaces going forward. So all things being equal, those tree works would happen over this autumn into winter. I suppose the only other thing to point out, we've added a new section to the management plans, which highlights how people can get involved. It highlights the groups that we work with regularly in them. There's reference to that in the report, so hopefully that's nice and clear. And then obviously you've got the risk assessments to have a look at as well, which now include an entire section about coronavirus, so these are the first 2 management plans where the risk assessments have had that put in place. So again, any questions about that side of things, very happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Chris. Any questions for Rob? Yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering what Wessex Water are doing down there. And my second question is that there seems to be, when you go along the paved pathway at the back, sort of as it were, the opposite side to where the river is, there's a kind of a strip of land there, some of which seems to be being reclaimed by residents and some of which is just sort of just jungle. Have you got any plans for that?
So Wessex Water are repairing a tidal flap in the river. So that work had started to be scheduled just before lockdown, actually, and then obviously nobody could do anything for a little bit. So they've come in as early as they can. They should be finished at the end of this week, all things being equal.
Chris, can you just tell us what a tidal flap is?
It's an inlet to stop the, basically, it will stop the river flooding and water going the wrong places, is my understanding. The tidal bit is probably the bit that confuses everybody in this, because it seems slightly the wrong terminology for it, but that's what we were assured they are doing. So yes. And to answer your second question, Rob, the land that you're talking about, which is just beyond from the slightly dilapidated garage, that's all privately owned, actually. It belongs to the various houses in Rodden Road. So where some of them are slightly more managed than others, that's how the houses along there are looking after them.
Okay. Any other questions for John? Hang on, hold on.
John, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. The pond idea is great. I just wonder if we can model it a little bit differently to maintain access throughout the year, unlike the sort of around the ASDA bit, because I think that's a little bit more awkward. I think that's what people would object to, because I think the pond idea would be exciting for people as long as they're not shut off like 6 months of the year. So.
Yeah, so the plan would be, it would just be open in the same way that Rodden Meadow is open. I mean, obviously, potentially there's a few hazards with ponds in winter time, but again, we've had some early discussions with Frog Life about the potential. They were quite excited by the site, and we're kind of quite excited to see what we might be able to put together.
Sheila, and then Rich.
I'm sure you're doing this, Chris, but it's just with the I'm sure what I would hope, and I'm sure you're doing it, is that you're liaising with the Friends of the River Frome over that pond as well, just because it all would link up, I assume. So
it wouldn't necessarily be linked directly with the river as it happens, because you'd probably want different water, different species. It's certainly going to be potentially quite close to it. So yeah, absolutely. I think in my mind, and certainly in the Rangers' mind, we're kind of really hopeful that if we pull together some nice plans and it looks possible and everyone's happy with the idea, we have lots and lots of volunteers involved in actually making it, because it's something that is going to be potentially could be quite labour intensive. And so yeah, Friends of the River Frome are certainly on that list of people that we're hoping to involve in this with some labour.
but I would hope that you involve them in actually your exploration of actually getting it done, because I think there's a lot of expertise in that group, and they may well have some, you know, information, ideas, and comments about how to go about it.
Very happy to.
Richard, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Sure, by all means, Friends of River Frome would be good. I was more interested to make sure there'd be issues about health and safety somewhere, so that's something to consider, you know, the depth of the pond and everything. And also from past experience, I've done something similar to this a long time ago in Trowbridge. You could do with a water supply possibly for dry summers, to give that a bit of thought, because if you make the pond and it dries out completely, it doesn't particularly harm the wildlife in it because they survive, but it can look a bit smelly and horrible. So just give that a bit of thought.
Thank you, Richard. Any other questions for Chris? I had a comment from a resident. I was asked to pass on this evening to Chris. And it says, I'd like you to pass on our thanks to Chris and the Rangers for the fantastic job they've done looking after Rodden Meadow and Millennium Green. We're immensely privileged to have them both on our doorstep, to be able to see spring and summer develop, the foxgloves and cow parsley grow and fade, and now the long grass. They've both been a source of joy and mental well-being during the last few months. We've also enjoyed interacting with people as we pass through, neighbours, people we know and people we don't. It's a place shared by all parts of the community, including youngsters, and we don't have many. Thanks. That's from Neil and Susie Howlett.
Oh, I do have
Rob, I see your hand up there. Yes, Rob.
Yeah, I understand from your management plan, Chris, that you're going to be looking to plant more trees there on Rodden Meadow. Just coming back to the private strip of land you just mentioned, is there any room for liaising with the owners of that land to put trees on it, rather than just it being scrubby, whatever you want to call it?
So you're making us look incredibly organised tonight, Rob, so that's brilliant. That very question came up probably 12 months, 18 months ago. So we did have some conversations trying to establish exactly who owns all of the different bits and whether they'd be interested in the council perhaps managing it. The view that we took was that if we couldn't necessarily manage all of it, it would become a little bit problematic. And there were quite a few residents who are actually quite happy looking after what they're looking after. We could try approaching them again. That wouldn't be too difficult to do. But I suspect the answer may yet be that they're not so interested in that, to be honest. And I know some people look after those sections as garden extensions. Some of them do as planting. So we haven't got to the bottom of, exactly who we might approach on an individual basis. And I think collectively managing it would be the way forward if we could do it.
Andy Palmer.
Thanks. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify, Chris, is that, so if you're walking along the path and you've got the gardens to Rodden Road, say on your right-hand side, is that the sections of, I don't know whether they're garden or whatever on the left-hand side, the small bits, right? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Chris? Going. Thank you very much then for that, Chris. Really good update. Thank you. And then our next item on the agenda is...
Sarah, we just need to vote on the recommendations to adopt the management plan.
Sorry, that's right. And we haven't got those on the screen, have we, this evening?
Do you want me to read them out and summarise them?
Could you very quickly? That would be extremely helpful.
So the, excuse me, the recommendation one was to adopt the updated management plans for both sites, and the new risk assessments, approve the scheduled review dates and the annual review of the risk assessments, and delegate responsibility to the environment manager, Chris, to deliver the plans, and finally to the environment manager to keep the risk assessments up to date.
Sounds great. Can I have a proposer for that, please? Lizzie, thank you very much. And a second? Mark, thank you very much. And can we take a vote? Hands?
So that's unanimous.
Everyone unanimous. Thank you very much. And next on the agenda, I believe, is it the finance update?
No, it's Chris again with just an update on what else has been going on around the town on
Chris
the parks and green spaces.
Parks update. Yeah, I was leaping ahead. Parks update. Over to you again, Chris. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, being a bit greedy. So hopefully everyone's had the opportunity to read the report and the regular update that we present here. I'll just pick out a couple of highlights, and then obviously very happy to answer any questions about what's going on. So as suggested, we're up to a full complement of rangers now. Ranger Phil started with us pretty much as soon as lockdown started, actually. So he's had pretty much the strangest introduction to a new job, I think. We've mown out a fun grass spiral at the old show field, which seems to be proving quite popular with people. Thank you, Lizzie. And that's something that, if people warm to and respond to, we might try and do again in future years, certainly at the show field again, and maybe in some other places as well. It's a little bit of work, but the prospect of a maze is something that we could maybe have a look at as well. As I suggested when we presented those two management plans, we've got a local expert going around doing tree surveys across a lot of our sites, and that's going to inform a lot of our tree works over the next 18 months. The residents group over looking at the land off Broadway that we discussed again in February have put together a really, really comprehensive and very professional management plan. So that is still progressing, and we're still in discussion with Mendip, and hopefully that will come to some sort of fruition soon. And you might have seen that the Rangers are starting work down at Chateau Gontier Walk at the moment as well. So they're replacing the old slightly battered fencing. They're going to be taking away the benches one by one and bringing those back. And then they're going to be fixing all the retaining banks. So we're going to end up with something that we can hopefully plant up again in the not too distant future.
Okay. Any questions for Chris on the land update? Richard, and then Rob, and then Steve.
Thanks, Chris. It's looking really good. I mean, it's a great job considering all the difficulties that you've had. It looks fantastic down there. Just got a question about British Network Rail's work, Pilly Bridge. Are we getting anything out of that? or are they kind of able to force themselves upon us? It might be a good opportunity to talk about that possible river crossing to the Saxonvale site. There might be some mileage in that, I don't know.
So just actually to clarify as well, this isn't the work that they're doing at the moment, because they have been quite busy doing some tree works today, as it happens. I don't yet know when this is going to happen, but at some point they are going to have to do some repairs to that bridge. And as I've suggested, they are hoping to make some use of Rodden Meadow and Millennium Green for some access and some storage, because quite frankly, I don't know where else they do it actually. They'd have a real difficulty coming up and down Willow Vale. Yes, is the short answer, Rich. We will look for some form of, we'll look for some money to come our way in order for them to secure some of the space. Kind of in two minds. The later in the year we leave it, the quieter Rodden Meadow is, but also the wetter and boggier it tends to be. So on top of anything else, obviously, we'll make sure that they reinstate anything that doesn't come back quite as it should be. But yeah, hopefully it might lead to some, building a relationship with somebody that we can have a conversation with about the bridge too. So.
Okay, thanks.
Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Great report. Just wanted to find out, first thing, what is a Froome speed indicator device, a SID, and where is it? Or are there more than one? Or and what's their purpose in life?
So when you have driven through towns and villages, you will see digital devices that tell you how fast you're going. Sometimes with smiley faces on, assuming you're going under the speed limit. Sometimes with cross faces if you're going over it. So we have got one of those, and we're working with Community Speed Watch and the local police and the county council in order to try and put it up in different locations around the town. So it's currently with the rangers. There's quite a lot of rules about where it can go in terms of fixing points. We're kind of hopeful we can get it onto existing streetlights and existing road signs for the most part, so we don't need to put anything else up. But once it's up at various points where people perhaps go a little too fast, a little too often, it will start to help manage that a little bit.
So just to be clear, there'll be several of these on different roads, yeah? No.
No, sorry, there's one. They're reasonably pricey to buy, and that one will get moved from location to location.
Oh, I see.
And Rob, what it'll do as well, it'll complement the Community Speed Watch team. So they move around with the speed cameras, and they know where the fast areas and the slow areas in town are, and they'll be advising Chris on, well, put that one there for a couple of weeks, and if you put it over there the following week, that's probably the most optimal use for it.
Yeah, no, my second question was, could you just spell out a bit more what the conversation with Mendip District Council entails about spaces that they're going to look after differently in the future?
So yeah, I don't want to talk on their behalf, obviously, but before lockdown, we were having conversations with the district council about whether they would manage certain spaces slightly differently and perhaps a bit closer to how we manage our Wildabout Froome spaces. So cutting them a bit less often, perhaps planting bulbs, perhaps planting wildflowers, that sort of thing. There seems to have been an awful lot of enthusiasm throughout lockdown and throughout the pandemic from people to actually see spaces become a little bit wilder, leave nature to do what it wants to do. So we followed up those conversations with the district council, and they have identified some spaces that they look after that they're hoping to do similar things with. We're just waiting for a full report on those spaces and what the plan is. But we're hoping to work really closely with them in terms of that. What I suspect you might see is some spaces, maybe over on the Stonebridge estate, for instance, which don't get mown quite so often. And yeah, so a little bit more Wildabout Froome across Mendip spaces as well as ours.
Terrific.
Thank you, Chris. And then Steve?
Yeah, Chris, thanks. Great report as ever. Just going back to Network Rail, actually. One of the things that we're sort of hitting a bit of a roadblock with them on the station is the disused platform. Is that we can't clear it, and we're not allowed to use power tools. So maybe we could do some sort of trade-off with them to get them to put a gang of guys up with various kit to tidy that platform up for us. Once it's tidy, you know, as a group, I think we can keep it tidy, but it's so overgrown. I mean, you couldn't do it with hand tools, I don't think.
That certainly happy to throw that into the conversation.
Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. Any more questions for Chris? No. Thank you very much then for your double header this evening, but Chris. And then we're moving on to the next agenda item, which is the finance update, is it?
Yes, it is.
It is. Sarah.
Thanks. I'm just going to share one slide. Okay, so the finance reports came out to you all, and I had a few questions lately, just in the last couple of days, which I thought I would address instead of going through the report, which you've already seen. To clarify the reserves that we have currently, at the last main council meeting where we reported on finance, councillors agreed that we could create some additional EMRs for work to be carried out this year. I'm afraid I hadn't done those journals before sending out the balance sheet, so I have done them now, and it's made a slight adjustment and reduced the general reserve by about 88,000 and increased the earmarked reserves. So just to clarify, the earmarked reserves are for specific projects which take place as and when they're able. The general reserves of the 700 includes 180 critical reserves and 58,000 in extra reserves, surplus reserves from last year, and general spending between now and the end of September. For example, salaries alone for 3 months would be 180,000. Just to address the amount that we are holding at Barclays, that amount will cover the next 3 months' salaries and the next 3 months' spending if we were spending at the current rate. Our reserves generally are spread quite evenly across the deposit accounts that we do hold. We did look last year at trying to move to a more ethical bank, but as Anne, I think, will support, and Paul, we had great difficulty in finding another bank that could provide the banking facilities we need: online banking, batch payments, cashing facility, and banking checks in the town. We might have to review this again if Barclays doesn't stay open in Frome. We have made slow progress on the work programme to date, but we expect that to speed up in the autumn and winter, and we're not currently planning to cut any activities, but to catch up. We did revise the year-end forecast to include extra expenditure due to the coronavirus emergency, and also to any savings we might have made, for example, by not being in the town hall. Utilities, we do hope, will have reduced slightly. So our net increase in expenditure was 70,000. We're also expecting to hear from the recovery panel about what extra expenditure that they may hope to achieve in getting their plans covered. We have submitted a request to MENDIP for support from the allocated government funding. If it's not received, we will have to do a total revision of the work programme and, in discussion with managers and councillors, decide where cuts might be made. So the basic message is that we're currently in a holding pattern until we know what's happening with the MENDIP District Council support. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, anyone have any questions for Sarah? I can't see.
Yeah, so Sarah, can I just add a bit to that? Sarah and I were talking earlier this afternoon. We're thinking that we'll know either way whether we get the support from MENDIP or the county to help reduce our deficit of 70,000 by the time the next council meeting comes along, which is in September. So we're thinking at the moment that we'll be able to put forward a revised work programme that will be costed, taking into account any losses that we might incur, which I think is on the 24th of September, something like that, towards the end of September. So that's when the kind of the the meaty bit of the year will, the rest of the year will be taken on.
Thanks, Paul, for that clarification. And then John.
Sorry, my phone was just ringing, so I didn't want to unmute just as the phone was ringing. I just wanted to add a bit to what Sarah was saying about us looking at who we bank with. And it is on our radar. It's something that we're looking at all of the time. The problem appears to be that if we want to bank more ethically, that really does seem to raise the cost of our banking quite considerably. And not only that, I'm thinking particularly of the Unity Trust Bank that we and Sarah and I had a look at last year. And because they don't have a batch processing capability, the time involved in both Hannah and Sarah processing our batch payments would cost so much in their time that it does appear that principals can be quite expensive. So if we chose to bank more ethically, we can absolutely do that, but we have to bear in mind that we would be spending more of the public's money in order to achieve that. So another way of thinking is that, okay, we're banking with Barclays, for example, and we might not agree with everything that Barclays are doing, but we can say, we are still banking with you. We would rather you didn't invest in fracking, for example. And incidentally, about this time last year, Barclays did pull out of investing in fracking. I think that might have been for financial reasons rather than ethical reasons. But in any way, they are no longer investing in fracking in the UK. But it is on our radar, and it is something that we keep re-examining.
Thank you, Anne. John was next.
I think my issue is around the fact that this amount and the fact that we're running a deficit already, this also includes that extra 20% precept rise. And for me, the issue around that is, for me, the justification of doing that precept rise was broadly and largely around the capital investments that we wanted to make as a council. So I'm just, if we're running a deficit, we're not doing those capital investments. I just want to put that on the sort of radar, that we sort of have a look at that when those new calculations come through and what MENDEP agrees to give us in the end. I just think, how can we make sure we preserve that capital fund that we'll need at a certain moment when whatever capital project we decide to take on, like for example, Weston or anything like that, that we're prepared. That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Sarah, do you want to come back to that?
Yeah, just to say, I think our precept increase was more to do with the ambition of the work programme rather than capital expenditure. The capital expenditure was already earmarked to come out of what one earmark reserve. For example, Saxon Vale was going to support the marketplace phase 2. Yeah, if we have to cut our cloth, it will be from work programme activity rather than capital. The other item is that our earmarked reserve, the capital that we received from the sale of Saxon Vale cannot be spent on revenue expenditure without a change in our financial regulations. It has to be spent on capital items.
Thank you. Rob.
That is so clear. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Rob.
I just wanted to ask how much we're actually trying to elicit from MENDEP. Have we got a figure which we're asking for, or we just get to?
Yep, just at the moment we've just asked for the 70,000 that we estimate the emergency is going to cost us after our savings.
Thank you. Yeah, Rachel.
So we have a question from Lenka. She asks, can we have some detail on the 70k spend?
Yes, that was, hang on.
It's one of the appendices, isn't it?
It is. I have it somewhere quickly.
If Lenka can hear us, can't you? At the bottom of page 2 on the report from Sarah, the year-end forecast, there's a revised budget sheet can be viewed here link at the very last line on the page.
I'll
But-
try to find the link online and send it.
Thanks, Rachel. Okay, any more questions on finances for Sarah?
Sorry, I couldn't find that quickly.
Lizzie?
Not a question, but a comment. Just a thanks really to Sarah and Paul and Peter and everybody else involved with the budgeting side of things. It's been such a movable feast over the last few months, and there has been pressure to bring forward a new budget as quickly as possible. And it's amazing that you've been able to keep us informed of the figures, and also at the same time that members of the council staff have been out looking for grant funding to try and kind of get what we can to help shore things up. And it's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic. So thank you all very much.
Yeah, I think we'll echo what Lizzie has said. Thanks for that, Lizzie. Okay, are we closing that item and then moving on to the next one, which is staff?
Sorry. So
So we
very
just need
quickly,
to-
there's one last small item. Tony Gibson of Golden Goose was running, I think, the St Catherine's Traders Association before he retired, and he closed the bank account and has transferred the balance to Frome Town Council of £975 on the understanding that we'll put it into an EMR for the St Catherine's trading area. So that will be a fourth recommendation. So would you like me to share? Well, I can read out the recommendations to you.
Okay.
To approve the income and expenditure sheet to the 30th of June, to approve the balance sheet, including the breakdown of reserves to the 30th of June, approve the list of payments made over 500 between 1st of April and 30th of June. And the fourth one is the creation of an EMR for the development of St Catherine's trading area, including Palmer Street, Paul Street, Stony Street, Catherine Hill. Expenditure from the EMR to be agreed jointly by FTC and a recognised association of the traders of the area.
Okay, does anyone want to propose? Anne, thank you. And 2 seconds. Anita, thank you. End of item, next item.
Oh, we just need to vote, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Yes, and the actual voting part. Can we take a vote on that, please, councillors? Looks unanimous.
Unanimous, this is, yep.
Great, thank you, everyone. And then the next part is staff update, I believe.
No, I think we're on to marketing communications update.
Communications update. Okay, that's moved since I looked at the agenda. Marketing and comms update. I'm guessing that's going to be you, Rachel.
That's going to be me, sorry. Yes. Okay, so first off, I apologise for the list nature of my report. Faced with such a lot of things, I wasn't really sure where I would pitch anything. So a list you got. I'm not going to read out that list now. You'll be relieved and pleased to know. But suffice to say, most of the work that we've done over the last 5 months, has been of a responsive nature to the coronavirus pandemic, obviously. All of the communication team taken on roles that would one way or another outside our usual realm, and we've repurposed our channel to support the Frome in the coronavirus pandemic. So the highlights really, I guess, have been the website was entirely repurposed. That included updating, collating all sorts of information, including, well, I suppose at the head of it was your mission statement, from which informed everything else. Frome FAQs, Frome for Each, Shop for Me, information, support and guidance, Frome shops and deliveries, government guidelines, neighbourhood groups, support for families, advice for business, budgeting in a crisis, and that was just the coronavirus elements. Discover Frome was also entirely repurposed, really, to focus on the shops who had closed, who was doing what, who was not doing anything, or who had to close. We have businesses unusual features, we had what's online features, all sorts of differences. It had been what's been really interesting is the reflection on the stats, which I am going to briefly share with you because because it's really very marked. worth it for the pretty picture. Here we go. So these are our stats, March, April, May, June.
Rachel, we're still
No, it's not
blank.
nothing there, Rach.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure why that is. It looks like we have it here in front of me. Okay, so never mind. I'll send you the pretty pictures of the stats for March, April, May, and June of last year, and March, April, May, and June of this year have been significantly different. The most stark change was June from last year. We had 7,000 sessions, 5,000 users, 15,000 page views. This June we are 16,000, so that is 250% increase. We have 12,000, which is another 250% increase, and we have 32,000 page views just in June alone. So we have had a significantly improved traffic in our website, mostly I would say to Becky's work in social media, and making sure that everything is so beautifully connected. The engagement and conversion rates from social media stats have also reflected on this. We didn't have this information when I was writing the report, otherwise I would have included these pretty pictures in that. So my apologies. I'm just going to try and stop sharing now. I'm not quite sure what has happened there. And just I'm guessing you might want to know what Froome has been talking about over the last few months, because that's another interesting thing that the stats have thrown up. March, no surprise. The biggest thing that everybody wanted to know about was coronavirus and current advice. That was our top hit page. Coronavirus FAQs and People's Budget. Can anybody remember that way back when? It's like another lifetime ago, but that was March. April, our new services, Uber Eats and Shop for Me, as we were very quickly getting those together. Everybody wanted information about that. That was alongside, at that point, the leaflets that we had put out. Also, Coronavirus Volunteer Network. Everybody was really busy signing up on the website. And the facts, again, appears if people still wanted to know about the FAQs in April, which is great because we've been constantly updating them all along. So it's really good to know that they've been considerably revisited. May, of course, everybody wanted to know about Recycling Centre. Yay! And of course, we were had also done What Next for Froome. So it's really heartening to know that something that you've put out is also reflected in joining things up. So that was good. And coronavirus FAQs were still there in May on our top 3. June saw Marketplace Phase 2, and in fact, of course, is responsible for that spike in figures. But what I would say is it's not such a massive spike to reflect just that event. It has been very high throughout this time. So that basically means that the leaflets and everything that we did pointing toward the website as a place to go for trusted information paid off. The other things that people have wanted to know about in June, not surprisingly, were the temporary road closures, and also the position statement re the retreat was very well received. So that were particularly the things that I wanted to point out. What next? We are sort of slowly turning our vision toward events and what may be happening online, what may be possible. We're just having a tentative dip into events. And accessibility. Throughout this time, we've still continued with our accessibility audit, which we're now at an end to. So that will inform work that we will have to just get done on the website. So the next bit is briefing some people who take the work forward in order for it to be ready next time we're here at Council Matters.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Any questions for Rachel from councillors? Lovely, thank you very much. Oh, jumping in at the last there, Rob.
It's not a question, it's just simply that it's just what your report was just almost overwhelming in what you've achieved and done. And I was just very very impressed by it. So thank you.
Thank you. It, of course, is not just me. It's my fantastically amazing, committed and brilliant team.
Again, yes, echoed from everyone. Thanks again, Rachel and the team. Brilliant. So, and the next agenda item is, please, Paul.
Update on the Market Town. Update on the Frome Town Hall.
Update on the Frome Town Hall. Thank you very much, Sarah.
That's Rachel.
Yeah, just Sarah's got her hand up.
Sorry, just to say there was a question from Lenka.
Sorry, we didn't see that.
About the fireworks. Do we think the fireworks will happen this year and light the night?
So I'll take that one, shall I?
Yep, sure.
The fireworks, I think, is highly unlikely. We sort of took the temperature with councillors early on in the year, and given the need to organise such a large event such a long time in advance, Rachel and I have been talking about that. Between us, we're thinking that it's not a runner this year, but obviously we haven't discussed that with you as councillors. So really, take your soundings. Just send us an email afterwards, whether you'd like to or not, and we will take that forward. I think just the time pressure, the physical time pressure to organise an event of that nature is going to be really hard this year, even if we wanted to do it. Is that all right, Rachel?
Yeah, that's fine. I'd just like to add Night the Light. We have started the planning along the traditional lines. However, we have also got an alternate plan running aside. So there will certainly be some Christmas lights switch on celebration, but quite what form that will take at the moment, we're not sure. But the paperwork for the road closure has gone in on a very speculative event plan.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other questions on that, Rachel, Town Hall update. Thank you.
Yes, so Town Hall update. Obviously, for most of this, the town hall's been closed since March the 23rd, I believe. So for the whole of this financial quarter, which is where this normally sits for the town hall. So the tenants have had a rent holiday, and obviously we haven't been there, and therefore people are declaring up until last week. So currently, the CCG has set up an antibody testing station in the town hall while it's closed. It's due to be there until the end of August. That really precludes us, or indeed any other partners, being there. It's an important service. Basically, they're testing NHS and care workers, and that will be a valuable resource for the town. It will work out whether people have got antibodies. What that will then tell anybody about anything, I'm not really sure, and I'm not sure they're really sure. But it is an important service for the town, and obviously means that our NHS workers won't have to be going out of town for their antibody tests. So we don't anticipate hiring to anyone else, as that is contrary to the CCG's risk assessment. We are very pleased that whilst the town has been closed, we've been able to help Fair Frome by providing additional storage within the town hall. So although the town hall is closed, we'll continue to risk assess requests to use the building on a case-by-case basis like that. I was going to show you my slides. You will have all seen the reports. My slides they differ slightly to Sarah's report in that they are looking purely at what is in the booking system, and so they show not a very. Because the only thing that we've got in the booking system at the moment is the CCG. So that does mean that there is a deficit, a rather large deficit. However, we have taken the opportunity to do a number of things in the town hall whilst it's been shut, things that we have been able to do. Various people have been working. We've had sash windows renovated. We've got a brand new back door, which is absolutely fantastic. Today, I'm delighted with that, I must say. We have had new painting on the car parks to help delineate the co-wheel space and the EV charging and the disabled bays. So hopefully that will help with the management of that. All the maintenance has continued. So the maintenance of the lifts and the water testing has continued, and that we've had a very, very deep clean where the CCG have been operating, and the cleaners are now working their way through the rest of the building. So although the town hall is closed, we'll just continue to risk assess on a case-by-case basis. One of those cases might in fact be our very first town hall wedding. I've heard today that somebody is booked in to get married in 10 days' time, and that the registrars have said a very tentative yes. So we are very tentatively getting excited about it.
Have you got your hat?
I have said this. I have been excited at so many council matters presentations for nearly there for a wedding. So I'm not going to get too bigly yet. Hopefully, this time next meeting, I will be showing you pictures of people in hats. Yes.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rachel. Any questions for Rachel on any of the council information, council building information she just passed on?
Yes, Rob.
Yes, Rob, thank you.
I'm doing overtime this evening, aren't I? Yeah, so the nearest testing station, this was a question that came up somewhere or other in relation to trying to facilitate members of the town or community being able to not have to go to Bristol or further afield. I was wondering how far we got any further with trying to establish somewhere where folk can go.
So there is a nearer one now, which is Odd Down. So actually that is a lot closer and a lot more convenient. It's very, very unlikely that we'd have our own testing station in.
Rachel, it's Odd Down Park and Ride, so it's even more convenient than Odd Down. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's this. Yeah. Sorry, it's this side of Bath in the park at the Park and Ride.
And my second question was around sash window renovation. Is that just draft insulating, or is it actually to do with secondary glazing or even double glazing, which might actually increase energy efficiency of the said windows?
At this stage, it is just draft insulation. I must say he's done an amazing job, though. It will make a really big difference. Anybody who's been near any of the windows. So he has taken them all out, done a thoroughly proper job, and made them all work, and made them all fit properly, and then done the draft exclusion.
So do we actually have a plan to address the energy efficiency of the building and to try and improve it and upgrade it?
So really that's a question for Chris, because that's his area of that's his area of looking.
Perhaps we can come, perhaps Chris has got the last agenda item, perhaps we can tack that question onto that, if that's okay.
Fair enough.
I just have a final, just a quick comment.
Yeah, John.
As someone who's spent a lot of lockdown repairing sash windows and replacing sash cords, I can say thank you very much for doing what you've done so far. I know it's not easy.
Thank you for that observation, Councillor Nelson. Any other questions or comments for Rachel relating to the Town Hall building, Council building? Okay, then in that case, it is over to Laura for the staff update.
There's nothing huge to say. It's just to highlight the things that staff have been up to. New starters, Phil and Helen started in her role as Wild About Trees project officer, and then we've all been busy bees on top of all we've been doing. We've been doing some extra training here and there where we can fit in, so it's just giving you a little taster of what we've been up to.
Paul, do you want to?
Yeah, just to tack on to that. We've been having a think about how to progress the Western Warehouse project with Peter having spent so much time on the marketplace. So we've pulled Rachel off some of her hours in the week and are looking to backfill her. So Rachel and Peter will be taking forward the Western Warehouse project for the next few months, see how we get on.
Thank you very much. Anne?
Mine was about Ranger Phil, and not only has he come into a very strange environment as he started his new job. But I also noticed on Facebook, and I think I passed it on to Rachel, how he'd been commended about a particular member of the public that he'd helped out in the park. So I think, you know, he's definitely slipped into that role really, really well, I think, in difficult times. And another thing that I wanted to tag on, it seemed to fit in best in the staff update. And there's been quite a lot of correspondence in the background amongst councillors and also Sarah and Paul about the local government pension scheme. And we're beginning to engage again with the trustees of the pension scheme, and just looking at the way it's not only funded, so their funding strategy, but also their investment strategy. So we're on the case. We're looking at what's going on with the local government pension scheme.
Thank you. Any questions for Laura? Yes, Anita.
I know we've actually issued something on this level before, but I do think it's worth saying that from all the councillors' perspective, how appreciative we've been of all the extra work staff have taken on during this COVID-19 period. I mean, it's quite astounding that you've continued to do your normal jobs, and on top of all that, you've adapted very quickly to things that are totally beyond your areas of expertise, and yet you've done such an incredible job. And I just wanted it to go on record how much we all appreciate that. So well done to everybody.
Seconded, I'm sure, and thirded by everyone, judging by the muted applause, literally muted applause. Okay, any last points on that before we move on to the final agenda item, which is health and safety with Mr. Chris Stringer.
If you're happy, I'll answer Rob's question quickly about the town hall and energy stuff too.
That would be great.
I can't give you a whole amount of detail right now because I wasn't expecting the question actually. What I can say is we obviously have energy certificates, as all buildings do, and the two key things that identified when we had that report was the inefficiencies of the old boiler, which has obviously been replaced by a new one now. And as Rob suggested, windows, of which we have a lot. So what I would suggest is we're conscious of the things that we should be doing. Those things do tend to cost money on a large scale and in a building of the sort we're looking after. Perhaps we'll bring back a more detailed report at some point that says, okay, this is how we get our building to be the best it can be, and these are going to be the costs going forward. And that's something I'll work on with Sean, Town Hall Steward, and with Anna, and possibly the likes of Lizzie and Paul, if they're happy as well. So yes, hopefully that answers your question, Rob, for now.
Okay, Rob.
Chris,
Thank you.
Sarah, can I suggest we sort of bring that back to the next meeting of this committee?
Yeah, absolutely.
If we get it all together in time.
Yeah,
so
brilliant.
We'll take that as an action.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, in terms of the last report, it's kind of a procedural thing as much as anything, because the majority of this report actually came to council the other day. I felt it should come back to the council matters, so we've got it minuted and recorded where it usually sits. And obviously the one thing that hopefully was nice and clear is actually, in the meantime, something fairly significant has changed. Our play areas are now reopen. Again, as suggested in the report, we are doing things. We take the safety of our play areas obviously incredibly seriously. It's really important, but at the same time, we are putting an emphasis and an onus on people to make sensible decisions by giving them information. I think that's the only way we can approach what's happening. It's going to be the way that we approach trying to reopen other things as we go forward. So the park toilets are something that we're looking at the moment. We'll look at the town hall in terms of reopening. And as Rachel suggested, we've now got an awful lot of people interested in running events, classes, activities in the parks and open spaces. And again, we'll be working probably a little more closely than we might have done in the past with all those people, actually, just to say, all right, we want to be really, really clear about how you're going to manage this. It might be that we have to say you can't all be in one place at the same time. So just kind of making sure that we try our best to reasonably and sensibly keep people safe. It is going to be something that is ongoing for as long as I think any of us can see at the moment. So
thanks, Chris. Any questions on any of that? Any questions from members of the public? Anything else come up on the moderator boards at all?
No, that seems all
Okay.
quiet.
In that case, Rachel, yes.
Just to say that on an earlier item, just Wendy wanted it noted that the report re Wilder Green Spaces will help her get her neighbours on board, re their space and Styles Place.
Excellent, that's good to hear.
Thanks, Wendy.
Okay, and then I think that completes the agenda.
Well
So
done.
just to say thank you and well done, everybody, and thanks for contributing. And we'll see you all anon.
Oh, okay.
Hang on.